the priest in charge, who spoke surprisingly clear English. He was a spare little man, middle-aged, with a luxurious salt and pepper beard, as if to compensate for his advancing male pattern baldness. He had trouble making eye contact with Shannon, and the reason became clear when he said,
"Yours is certainly the loveliest face to grace our premises in many months, Mrs. Weber. You must have Greek blood in you, no? Your dark hair, your—"
"I wish I could claim that distinction, Father Athanasius," she replied. "But no, I'm just an Irish-English hybrid who moved to America. And I love old churches like this one. How long has it been standing here?" He pointed a pensive finger to his chin.
"This building went up in the 1700s, but it was built on foundations of the church before it."
"And when was that one built?" He smiled, shook his head, and said,
"Centuries ago. Many centuries."
Shannon smiled inwardly and wanted badly to surprise the cleric with word that she was excavating what was likely the grandmother church to this one. But that would be premature. First, the official dig report had to be published. "Does your church have archives, a library?" she asked.
"Oh, yes, of course."
"I'm fascinated by old books. Might you be kind enough to let me see your collection?"
"But of course. Please to follow me."
They walked across a sun-drenched courtyard rimmed with trellises of grapevines and entered a library annex. The priest allowed Shannon row after row of books until they came to a section whose shelves were bending under the weight of ponderous old volumes, some bound in gray-white parchment skin. Here Athanasius stopped and explained why his church was named for St. James the Just. He picked out an ancient tome.
"Here we have Eusebius's Historia Ecclesiastica. You know Eusebius?"
"Of course, he's the very father of church history." Athanasius smiled and nodded appreciatively. He laid the volume on a table and opened it to what seemed to be a bookmark of sorts, then translated the Greek that spoke of the martyrdom of James the Just of Jerusalem, Jesus' half-brother, or cousin as some would argue, and the first bishop of the Christian church.
"Eusebius writes that he got this information from Egesippus," the priest continued. "You know Egesippus?"
"Oh, yes. My husband often raves about Egesippus. He tells his classes that if we had the 5 lost books of that first-century Jewish Christian historian, we'd know much, much more about the earliest church." Father Athanasius beamed.
Yes, it is as you say."
While he showed Shannon the text, her eyes quickly shifted to what was serving as a bookmark for the Eusebius passage. Several brownish leaves of what seemed to be parchment of some sort. Their darker color showed that they had to be older than the Eusebius tome, much older. The writing in the text, however, was so faded as to be hardly legible. "Have you read this material, Father Athanasius?" she asked, pointing to the dark leaves. "Have you ever been able to read it?" He shook his head.
"I read only a few words of the ancient Greek, but it must be old, very old."
"Yes, indeed." Obviously, those pages had come from a larger collection, probably a codex, the world's first book form, and Shannon could only wonder if that codex was somewhere in the stacks surrounding them. She asked, "Do you know where these leaves came from? Do you have more of them?" Father Athanasius merely shrugged and held out open hands.
"I don't know. The former priest here showed me the old Eusebius book and how I could use it to show people why our church is named for St. James. I never thought to ask him about the pages."
"You know, we have instruments in America that could easily bring out the text, Father. Anything this old, this ancient, could be important, very important." She stopped and knew she should not have been so direct, but the words escaped before she could restrain them. "Might it be possible for me to take these with me to the U.S. for a short time? I'd return them quickly, by international express, along with a clear copy of the restored Greek text." Father Athanasius had a wounded look, staring at the bookshelves and saying nothing. "I would guard them with my very life, good Father. The text may or may not be significant, but if it is important, we might gain valuable information about the early church." He shook his head slowly and said, "Is it